Thank you. Yes, so hello everyone. One hat that I have in UCD Library is the chair of the UCD Library Green Group. So my part is going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour because we're going to be repeating a lot of information that's been discussed already. And I think the kind of, maybe the juicy part is Ursula's talking about the capital development program. And really the title here, having a green focus, is important because back in 2019, Ursula came with an email looking for volunteers from our staff to join a green library group as such. And with that, I said it is voluntary, kind of on a voluntary basis for our staff, but it's really just to kind of take stock and get an idea of what we're doing and look what we're doing on our own doorstep. But ultimately, it feeds into the bigger picture when we're, particularly things like the capital development project. But from my side of things, it's really about the sort of those small little items. So yes, volunteers from within the staff. And with that, we had a little bit of planning. So Green Group, we set up in 2019, and what our aims are is to raise awareness among UCD Library staff, or environmental awareness amongst our staff, to place increased focus on recycling opportunities. So these are things that have been discussed and will be discussed throughout the next couple of days. Identify opportunities to become more energy efficient and seek across campus collaborations to assist in achieving identified goals. Sensible things to do in many respects, okay? The collaborations are the ones that I'm really interested in here. So in the planning process in 2019, first thing we did was to conduct a survey of our own staff. We got 63 responses, so this represented 52% of our staff. Work out the maths, folks. And we had recommendations made to library executive. And our survey posed questions around recycling, division of waste, energy efficiency, water resources, staff education, promotion of our green initiatives. And ultimately, it helped inform the decisions in terms of the Green Library Group. Now, a couple of things. One, when you kind of start investigating this, we realized that UCC Library were a little bit ahead of the game with us, so about 3 years ahead. Yes, as I said, Cork 1, Dublin 0. Yeah, we'll give you that. We'll chalk that one off. But also UCD Green Campus were up and running. And so when we were looking at how we what are the main themes, we wanted to fit in with UCD Estates. So these are the key areas: biodiversity, waste reduction, recycling, energy efficiency, sustainable commuting, and water conservation. So the first things we were doing is really take like an audit or a stock take of what are we doing already, what can we do, and what we hope to do in the future. So again, a lot of repeated themes: paper cups, paper water cups, keep cups, recycling, recycling bins. A lot of this we were doing already, and a few, the ideas within the group, the Green Group, have emanated from, ideas that we've produced. So little things there like, book swap was already up and running. And when we were during orientation, we'd traditionally give gifts away, but actually using gifts like, that were sustainable and that had been recycled. And then ultimately at the moment, even making decisions, as you said there in Cork, actually maybe not to actually give out gifts and to rethink about how you produce all these things. LED lights, it's just so happened that we were introducing LED lights within buildings to reduce printing. So for example, post-pandemic, coming back to an office with lots of paper saying, actually a lot of this, do I really need it? How do you work? How do we change the way we work? And how do we promote this, encourage this with our staff? Not just with our staff, by the way, but with our students as well through our campaigns. We already had electric delivery vans up and running. One of the ideas here was around, from our own staff, was around biodiversity, was around a wildflower meadow, so that the James Joyce Library has a lot of kind of green space around it, and actually, do we need to be cutting those lawns around the building? And actually, no, we don't. And this fed into the overall UCD pollinator plan. So now the library is part of that pollinator plan. And this all comes into the whole idea of collaboration. Water conservation. So you can see when we've got our guide here, we have some of the promotion for our students and staff. This is a look of we use a LibGuide. So created by ourselves since 2020. It has had 2,500 views roughly in 3 years. When peak viewing, ultimately when we were running campaigns, and I guess it is for ourselves, a shop front. Look, people don't necessarily go looking for this kind of page, but when they do, or when we do a campaign, it is great to have all this viewable and accessible, and ultimately gives a good sense of outreach of what it is that we're promoting. But this is the one I really like, collaborations, okay. So we have had a lot of success in terms of collaborations. The pollinator plan with UCD Estates, we've had a quiz for B-Day, and not to be confused with a French toilet. And we have Green Week, E-Cups. We've worked with UCD Creche, UCD Rosemount. So we've had visits to UCD Rosemount, where we've gone to visit the apiaries and learned within our own staff around bees. And we've had, now this one here, I'm going to talk a little bit in a second about the Learning Enhancement Project, which is a project that sprung out of the fact that we had put that sort of green focus on an opportunity ultimately. Warp It, by the way, Ursula will talk a little bit more about this, is where we have worked with recycling furniture, and this feeds in again to the kind of UCD sustainable goals as well. And then we've worked with public libraries in terms of recycling books. This Learning Enhancement Project, around the time that we formed the UCD Library Green Group, an opportunity arose in terms of funding. So there was money available for this Learning Enhancement Project, but 4,000 in funding. And like this is, Monty Python say, now for something completely different. In terms of a library, we said, actually, we could get involved in this project and work with students and give them an opportunity to kind of showcase ideas. That we worked with an external media organization or company called Army of Vid, and they collaborated and worked and made videos. If you get an opportunity, it's on our guide. You'll see the URL, and actually up on our YouTube channel as well. We have all the videos that were created by the students. It was incredibly successful to the point that we went, actually, when people said, "Do you want to do it again?" and went, "It is a lot of work, and maybe we'll visit again in a few years." A few photos. Here's our wildflower meadow around James Joyce Library, our visit to the apiary in UCD Rosemount, and this is one of the campaigns that we're collaborating with UCD Estates. We are constantly looking for things to kind of curate and to, repurpose recycling, and I'm conscious now that Ursula needs to move on, but ultimately, Rebecca mentioned this in the first thing, it's really about, like what Toffler said, all these small elements ultimately can feed into the bigger picture, okay? On the negative side a little bit, there can be an element of green fatigue. You can be accused a little bit of greenwashing. We're aware of all this. And ultimately, we just want to kind of, maintain interest, which can be a little bit difficult. Also, there's a little bit of a plateau in terms of ideas that we can produce as a green group. However, is it worth doing? Yes, in terms of taking stock, leading by example. It has fantastic outreach opportunities. It fosters collaboration. It's really got our staff involved. It's not too time consuming, and then ultimately has helped reduce our carbon footprint. I'm going to hand over to Ursula now, and she's going to talk about the capital development project and ultimately having that kind of green focus. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I'm going to follow on from James's presentation, and I'm really struck that with these presentations in this session, there's a lot of similarities between it. So James's is very similar to Martin's, and the presentation I'm going to give has resonances with Siobhan and Peter's. So following on from James, because we had the green group, what it does is it raises the consciousness of our staff to always be thinking about the recycling, the sustainability issues. And as Rebecca Smith-Aldrich said this morning, it's about consciousness, and sustainability has to be a core issue for us. And I think with our capital development project in the James Joyce Library, which is the largest capital development project in the last 50 years that we've had. Now, UCD Library exists for 50 years, the James Joyce Library, and the furniture that we had in it and the core building has been really sustainable. It's lasted the test of time, and the challenge for us with the capital development project is to develop spaces that will last time as well. So, okay, so we're looking for sustainable design, and we work very closely with design architects and with UCD Estates. And I should say also that I don't claim ownership of this project. All of the teams in the library and many teams in the university are assisting with this. So we're looking to future-proof the design, so we will get another 50 years. We want the spaces to be adaptable, multifunctional, but we also are obliged to increase seating capacity by 28%, which is, if anyone who's been in UCD Library, it's already really full and to the gills, really. So that's a real challenge for us. So how do we develop spaces so that they can be flexible, yet increase our seating? It has to have a timeless aesthetic because it's a 1970s building, and we're very aware that we have to respect the core function of the building. So we also need a clear design rationale so that as this project is developed over 3 to 4 years, that we don't end up with a patchwork approach. It looks like one designed space when we're finished. Any of the materials, and like I say, there's resonances with Siobhan's comments, we're looking at using sustainable materials. A high recycled content, a low VOC, so that means we're not using toxic materials in our paints, in our when we're cleaning ceilings, in varnish, anything like that. So we want to have a low carbon footprint, but we need to use quality materials that will last. That's actually critical, and it's often a very expensive consideration. The cheaper furniture that can be recycled is often materials that has to be replaced very often. So we're very aware that whatever we do, it has to last the test of time. The other key area for us in terms of developing the space is sustaining wellness. So our spaces need to be safe, accessible, and inclusive. We want to increase the connection for our users to the outdoors. So we want more availability at the window spaces so the students have access to natural light. We want to use glass walls wherever we can so that natural light can penetrate the deep footprint of the building as well. We're very aware of the type of lighting that we have in the space. So we want to use a variety of different types of light because a lot of our users and indeed some of our staff have light sensitivity. So we're very aware of that. But we also need to create contrasts for our users so that the spaces meet different user needs. So we're looking at counterbalancing the concrete finishes with warmer wood finishes. We also want to incorporate art and exhibition areas so they feel like they're inspiring spaces for our users because they spend so much time there. So just starting off on level 3, the entire programme is at 12,000 almost metres squared. It's tied in very closely with our library curation project, so we're seeking to reduce our stock by about 20% through a curation project. We're also moving all stock in the space. There's 26,500 linear metres of stock in UCD, in this library, in the James Joyce Library, and everything will move in the next few years. So it's a huge project. And like I said, it involves our collections team, our facilities team, our outreach team for communication is really important as well. Part of the project will bring our cultural heritage collections to co-located together so they'll raise their profile and their impact. We'll create a new basement store, and we're going to enhance the entrance area so that it's more welcoming. And again, tying in with the previous point, we don't want our users' first impression of the space to be a barrier and need to be carded in. We want them to feel welcome, and they'll come in and hopefully penetrate the library deeper in so that they're in already and they don't feel there's that, will I go in and can I get in and what happens if? So that's a challenge for us. So stakeholder engagement has been absolutely critical for us. We've done a lot of surveys. We did a love letter breakup letter survey where we said to our users, it was an online survey, what do you love about us? and why are you going to stay, and what do you hate about us, and so you're going to break up with us and go away. And we got 69 responses. We find with online surveys the response rate is quite low. So our second survey then was a survey that we did with the design architects, and it was a paper survey that we put out on desks, and we did it for 48 hours, and we got over 600 responses, which was really interesting for us and gave us really interesting data. We also did a sensory space survey working with UCD Access and Lifelong Learning, because we wanted to understand what the needs were of the students who had sensory issues. We worked with a reference group, and we had design workshops, and we also visited Maynooth. Was anyone in Maynooth here? We had a great visit to Maynooth as well. So as part of the space survey, we designed 5 study modes, from completely quiet and silent to collaborative workspaces, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But what we were looking at for was that the spaces are very different. So students can come in, they can choose the type of study space that best suits their needs at that time of the year, because we know at different times of the year they need access to different spaces, but also different types of seats, what suits them in terms of the seating type. Okay, so this is a quote from one of the surveys, and a student gave us a comment that said, "I'm autistic and the library is a very difficult place to be in. It's not a suitable place for me to work in. The open spaces are too distracting and the lighting is extremely harsh." And I continued on for another little bit, and then the final comment was, "So I left and I had a headache." So when students are overwhelmed, it just doesn't, library spaces should be spaces that people can arrive in and do their work and feel welcome, and spaces that suit what they need. So we're putting in 2 sensory rooms based on that feedback and other feedback we got. We're working with our UCD Access and Lifelong Learning people. There's occupational therapists in that staff team, but we're also working with an external occupational therapist. And based on that, we're putting in 2 sensory rooms. The first room will be a transition room. And a transition room is for when a student feels that they have a sensory overload. They have a space that they can go to withdraw, to decompress, and then to be able to re-engage and come back out into the space. The second room is a sensory study space. So the first room will only have chairs that students can go in, and it's similar again to Trinity. There will be a variety of furniture that they can rock, that they can work off that sensory overload. There'll be an area to pace. There'll be a sensory wall for tactile wall, so that they can run their hand along a wall as they pace. One of the things the students said to us was, in terms of these spaces, that they wouldn't feel judged if they were in these spaces with other people with sensory needs. So if you think of a student who has sensory overload, they often stim. So you ever see students stimming, their hands go like this, and then they feel everybody's watching them because they're stimming, and then they feel more pressure because people are watching them. So based on these rooms, the recommendation is maximum 5 people in each room. So we're putting 4 people into the transition room because there will be pacing and movement in that room, and we're putting 5 people into the sensory study room, and in that case there'll be a variety of chairs to suit different needs, but there will be desks, and it lends itself to study. So overall on level 3 there'll be 535 study spaces, 2 sensory spaces, an exhibition space, 2 silent study areas, additional toilet facilities, more sit-stand desks, Zoom rooms and booths, and like I say, a variety of furniture types. The overall plan is like this, and you'll see there's 5 main colours in this. The purple at the core is soft seating, often with booth seating. So it's the space that students come off the floor. The centre part, the white centre part, is the escalator. So the purple space is where they move through to get to other spaces. The spaces at the periphery are the silent spaces. And the green space on the left is complete silence. So there's different size desks, there's different range of chairs, there's high chairs, there's sit-stand desks, and basically a variety of seating. So here are some of the architect's design visuals. So you see we've put cladding on the pillars. It's a totally concrete building because it's a brutalist building from 50 years ago. Beautiful building, but nevertheless not very welcoming sometimes. So we're putting in a lot of wood and wood finishes to manage acoustics. There's a variety of lighting used in different areas. So again, students can go to the natural light, the windows, but there's also different lighting used in different parts of the space. So again, the idea is that while we have the sensory rooms, the actual space on the floor, the students can choose the space that best meets their need. So the sensory rooms are only for a very small number of people with overload. The other spaces should support their actual, some of their other sensory issues. So there's general seating, different types of lighting. We've put in screens. The screens you can see there, the light can penetrate through them. There's different size desks, different height seats, and just a total, there's much more space between all of the seats. So one of the main complaints the students had was that they didn't want an exam hall feel. They felt uncomfortable with that. So just a final point, pulling up something James said. We're very aware that we've well over 2,000 seats in this building and we're recycling. We've furniture and chairs from 50 years ago and they're perfect. A lot of them are completely perfect. So we're upcycling. And to date, working with Warpit and also Facebook Marketplace, we've upcycled our desks, chairs and some of our other furniture to national schools, secondary schools, Deutsch schools, community centres, after-school programmes, so that'll be young children, preschool programmes, men's sheds, and UCD community units within UCD as well have also taken chairs. A chair will cost you at least €100. We've schools around the country looking for 100 chairs. That means they're saving €10,000. The chairs have lasted 50 years. They'll outlast me. I mean, they're really sustainable. So it's something to think about when we're developing spaces. And finally, thank you from James and myself, and there's the credits there from the Green Library Group who've completed that work as well. So thank you.